Welcome back, everybody. I thank everybody for tuning back into the Power of Perspective, the talk show. This is season 2, episode 1. Today, our episode is going to be centered around recovery, addiction and recovery. I am addiction, I am recovery. And I met this incredible gentleman, a young man, probably about 4 or 5 months ago, maybe, or 4 or 5 months ago, here at Duquesne University. And he's just a very remarkable person who blessed us with his presence, and he just has a really incredible story, very influential and engaging way of telling it, and just wanted to interview somebody who not only is doing well and is experiencing success with recovery, but also has had some years with addiction, which I think I'm going to argue that we all do in some way, shape, or form. So stay tuned to the Power of Perspective, the talk show, and we're going to come back with Mr. Alex Hoffman. Oh man, so Alex, I mean, you can start wherever you want to, but I've heard the story before. I think that in my own private practice, in perspective, working with people who I think I work with some of the most, just fabulous, interesting, and impacting, inspirational people walking the earth, because they're not afraid to expose their dark side. And I think here at the Well-Being Center, we, with the model that we have, we get to meet people like yourself. I think that we are also professionals who have our own dark sides that inspire us to do what we do. But can you tell us a little bit about, your life before recovery?
Yeah, absolutely. What I always like to do is kind of try to break the stigma, that addiction has with it. A lot of people think addiction is a homeless guy, shooting heroin under a bridge, or somebody from an urban environment shooting crack. When I tell people I used to shoot heroin, in my neck or in my arm, people's jaws always drop. So it started when I was 13 years old. As a kid, had a great childhood. Played sports, had mom and dad. It was a good family. It was all right. The addiction started taking off when I was trying to, I guess, find myself.
Mm-hmm.
Hang out with those older people or a crowd where I would fit in.
Mm-hmm.
Middle school, kind of got bullied and picked on. Still as a kid, trying to figure out who I was. And at 13, that's when I was introduced, to marijuana and alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as I did it, I fell in love with it. I thought, this gets me in a cool crowd, this gets me with the people, and I just loved the feeling of just getting away from myself,
Mm-hmm.
not being me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with that, 13, marijuana, alcohol, 14, 15, 13 through 18 was kind of just experimenting, kind of with like cocaine, ecstasy, mushrooms, smoking weed every day, but with the drugs came my behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
I had horrible behaviors. My attitude towards life was terrible. High school, I dropped out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
I was in juvenile rehab, went to juvenile shelters, juvenile jail, all because of my behaviors and also the addiction on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
When I was 13 years old, kids were messing with me, once again picking on me, and I had a BB gun and I pointed at them and I told them, if you mess with me again, I'll kill you. And that's kind of what put me on juvenile probation. You have to pass drug tests when you're on probation, and obviously I didn't through the drug use, and put me in juvenile jail, rehab, and shelters.
Wow. I think one of the things that I'm wondering, right, because everything that you said, hit home, I think, with me in some ways, if not directly, vicariously through maybe some other story that I'm aware of. But there's so much I want to ask you. Do you think that like, were you a follower back then? Were you a leader? Were you like, because I want to know. You said that you fell in love with it, and it caused you to, be more accepted within the in crowd. So, one of the demographics I work with a lot of teens and young adults, who don't have a lot of self-awareness, awareness of their true self, which I'm passionate about helping people find their true self. Because I think when you do that, certain things don't fit within your own way of being anymore. So when you said that you were 13 years old and this helped you become more part of the in crowd, I'm thinking, wow, well, maybe he wasn't a leader back then. Maybe he was a follower.
Yeah, not at all. I was a follower.
Okay.
I can sit back, think about it, and say that now that, you know, I kind of just followed where the crowd went.
Okay.
You know, I just wanted to be a part of. I think if I was a leader at that time, I might not have gone through the things that I went through.
Yeah. Can you say more? I want you to say more about that. I mean, because I think that you explained it in a simple fashion and it makes sense. But the reason why I want to stay on that issue is because, you know, I think that there's so many people, right? When I look at you now, when I experience you now, I didn't know you back whenever you was 13. You didn't know me whenever I was 13, 14, which honestly, as much of a leader as I am for myself today, and as hard-headed as I was back then, I don't think that I was a true leader for myself. Not for other people, but I wasn't comfortable in who Shawn was, right? So my thing wasn't drugs at the time, but it was fighting. You know, I was addicted to anger and rage because people respected me for that. But I think that so many people don't get a chance, opportunity to become their true self, and they fall victim to trying to put on a hat of who other people are. So can you just talk a little bit about just what you think about how at that age, adolescence, about how, you know, self-identity and self-awareness might play a big role, even though we didn't have as much as we wanted to back then. Like, what are some of your ideas about how that element plays a role?
I mean, it plays a huge role. You know, I think it's very tough for kids nowadays to figure out who they really are inside, especially with all, you know, outside entities and outside sources. You have the media, Hollywood, movies, radio. You have everything that kind of pushes somebody in towards, well, this is cool. You know, you have to wear your hat backwards or smoke weed or, you know, dress like a mafia. You know, Hollywood and the media dictates these young kids nowadays, especially with TV.
Yes.
You know, so I could say for myself, you know, it was very hard finding who Alex was at a young age because so many outside sources was dictating who I should be, and not just only with, you know, media, television, radio, movies, but now when you go into middle school and high school, now you have different crowds and different demographics, and you're trying to fit in. If you don't fit in here, you know, you want to try to fit in here. You know, these people are cool. Let me try to go in here. So, you know, now I'm altering myself in a way where I'm gonna fit in with these people. You know, we call it being a chameleon. You know, eventually towards down the road, you know, I was an expert at being a chameleon. I could fit in with any single demographic group that I wanted to fit in with. But you know, it's very tough, and you know, I feel like you don't really find yourself until, you know, later in life after high school, or some people do. Some people are like, hey, you know, I seen this, I seen that. You know, I don't want to go through that.
Excellent points, man. I mean, I agree with you. It's to the point that, you know, I like to walk around cemeteries sometimes. I feel like it's one of the most, you know, interesting places. You know, I've heard that it's the richest land in the world because when you go there, you'll find people who, you know, didn't use their talent, skills, didn't create the inventions that they were supposed to create. So the soil is rich with all of these things that were never used. But I also believe that, you know, when I walk around the cemetery, it's like some people at the cemetery, you know, may they prosper the next life. And I mean no disrespect to anybody who's deceased at all, or living, or who may be dying, you know, including, you know, ourselves, because we're all dying. But I just don't believe that everybody deserves to have the name on their tombstone that they do, because so many people live their entire life trying to be somebody else around them that wasn't authentic to that name on a tombstone, right? You're living authentically to Alex. I'm living authentically to being who I am. You know, that some of the viewers are living authentically to who they are, but most people don't do that, right? And like you said, it can happen earlier in life, but some people live their entire lives and don't really understand the true essence of who they are. So one of the things I want to ask you now is, you know, how did you define, like, what did it mean to be cool to you back at 13, 14, 15? Like, what did it mean? Like, was there other kids doing drugs too, or having sex? Like, what did it look like to be cool? Hey, thank you for tuning in so much. We'll be right back with Alex Hoffman on the Power of Perspective, the talk show, after these messages. what did it look like to be cool?
Well, when I was younger in high school, cool to me was you weren't that smart. So you dumbed yourself down so other people could understand you. You had to dumb yourself down. You know, I grew up and went to high school in early 2000s, so a lot of baggy clothes, baggy jeans, Timberland boots, smoking weed, drinking E&J and Henny and all types of other stuff.
Yeah.
You know, when people see that, you know, at 14, 15 years old, and you're in high school, you know, then the girls want to hang out with you. And, you know, but my biggest mistake is what I brought up my first point, dumbing myself down. Why did I ever do that? Right. You know, I cut school and I sabotaged my learning and my knowledge gaining abilities just to fit in with another crowd where if I said a big word, they looked at me like I was crazy because they didn't understand me. Right. So now I played myself down so people would understand.
Right. I do believe that, you know, like, you know, whenever you commit psychological suicide, sometimes, you know, the actual suicide of yourself can come, you know, after that. And sometimes suicide does not mean taking a gun to your head and killing yourself. It doesn't mean, you know, taking pills and killing yourself instantly. Sometimes suicide can take years, right? You might be living out suicide, right? So, you know, I don't want to speak for you, but I've known people who, you know, have, in my opinion, have committed suicide over the course of 3-4 years, 10 years, because they're actively killing themselves. We know that doing this is not good for me. I know this is not good for my body and it's killing me, but I'm going to do it anyway. To me, that's suicide. So as you talk about dumbing yourself down, to me, that's killing yourself psychologically in a way. And then you're open to all these things like doing drugs,
Right.
you know. So that's very fascinating, man.
Another thing is, you know, it's like my mind was hijacked. You know, I was under some type of spell or mind control is what I feel like, you know, after the other side. It's just like, you know, why did I do all that stuff? I feel like I was caught in something and, you know, I kind of broke free from it. Once I broke free, it's like, you know, I wanted to know more. I wanted to learn. You know, I wanted to do things differently. I didn't care what cool was anymore.
Speak more about that. Speak more about that, because you had talked about how, you know, you believe that, you know, you find yourself maybe later in life after high school. And I think that it can come at any time. I just think that people don't put a lot of attention to it because we don't encourage self-discovery, right? We go through years and years of schooling, but very rarely do we have anybody encouraging self-discovery in us. But talk a little bit about, like, the time period, because you're 24 years old, right?
I'm 24.
You know, 24, but, you know, you have the mind of somebody who's, you know, 30 years your senior. But talk a little bit about the process of, like, you know, how long it took you to get to that place that you call breaking free.
It took a long time, from whatever 13 to 21 is, 8-9 years. I want to say I was blessed. It's not really a blessing, but to me it was a blessing that I went through a lot of stuff that I went through. The jail time, that was big on seeing who your true friends were, doing solitary confinement, you know, 23-1, had a lot of time to think, losing friends, going to rehab, being, you know, homeless on the streets by yourself, you know, using heroin, doing anything to get the next drug, you know, stealing from my family. All of those played a key role into who I am today. You know, I've had that solitary time to sit and think, like, oh, do I want to do this? This person was never here for me. Why did I do that? I felt this emotion. I felt this pain. And at 21, when I got clean, you know, it's been almost 3 years now, but it took a lot of, you know, digging deep down inside with all those small little dots, kind of connecting them and building who I am today.
Yeah. In my new book, you know, The Language of the Few, it touches upon, not touches upon that, it really grabs that idea, because I do believe that, you know, everything happens for a reason. Obviously, that's a very cliche way of saying that, but you know, all of the experiences that we have, all of the situations that we are in, you know, are part of developing who we are, right? I think it was Carl Rogers, or I mean, it might have been Jung, who said, you know, who you are going to be, you are now becoming, you know. I was listening to one of the hip-hop podcast guys. I'm finding myself watching more of his stuff. His name is Tax Stone, and he was talking about, like, he spent a lot of time in jail, right? He said that he missed, like, a lot of his early, or his 20s. I think he did, like, about 7 years at different points. But he said that, like, you know, like, he learned so much by being in jail, but it also stunted his growth the most, right? So he said that being in jail can teach you so much if you're willing to learn, but at the same time, it could stunt your growth, right? So when I hear you talking about, you know, that point where you broke free, it reminds me that, like, you know, I remember just my family and friends, nobody wanted to hang around me because they were scared that somebody was going to retaliate. I might have beat somebody up, you know, I might have done something to somebody, and I'm not a thug against it at all, but I definitely love physical aggression. I love it. I don't start stuff, but I definitely don't mind getting in it and finishing it. But there was a point where I'm like, you know what, I ain't this type of person. People want to kill me. I gotta stay up in my apartment for 2 weeks. I gotta have people look out for me. And for me, the turning point was like just getting tired of getting arrested, not having anybody who want to go out and kick it with me. Family, all the eras were pointing to me. Like my dad would always tell me, you blame everybody else, and it came to a point where like I recognized, wow, like everybody said the same thing about me, so maybe it's me. You know, but I'm kind of hearing that in your story.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That was one of the biggest, you know, aha light moments. Also, you know, that this was me. This wasn't mom and dad's fault. This wasn't so and so's fault. This wasn't the other guy's fault. It wasn't the teacher's fault. Yeah. You know, this was me. I did this to myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Was it hard for you to take accountability?
Once I got clean, no. When I was still using drugs, of course. Yeah.
So. Did the breakthrough moment come, I guess, you know, would you say that the breakthrough moment came after you got clean, or maybe you just wanted to get clean? Because I guess my next question is based off of your answer to that.
Yeah, well, when I went to my last rehab at 21, I had nothing. My family wanted nothing to do with me. I had nowhere to stay, nowhere to go. I was living on the streets. I went into the rehab knowing I didn't want to get high, but I didn't know if I wanted to stay clean. You know, I just knew I didn't want to live that life, but I didn't think there was a different way of life that I could live. The aha moment I stayed in that rehab for 6 months. Yeah. When I got a job in that rehab, I was detailing cars, but still staying at their sober living. Yeah. So I was going to work every day, going in early, staying late. You know, I was taking something that was so dirty, cleaning it and making it beautiful. And it was like, after my first car I did by myself, I was like, oh, you know, maybe this is something I can do. Right. You know, I had faith and I worked hard, and you know, I believed in myself. You know, somebody didn't come knocking on my door saying, hey, you want this, you know, job? I had to go get it. Right. At
Brook-Tree?
Yeah, at Brook-Tree.
Yeah. That's fascinating. I know that you and our director here, Dr. Edwards, have kind of symbolically talked about how, like, you know, like, you getting things clean now was literally like symbolic of what you were doing for yourself, which is, again, another element of the new book that I wrote, The Language of the Few. You know, there's this language that I think that humans have really forgotten about. You know, Dr. Caroline Miss called it symbolic sightness, the ability to, you know, process your experiences, as somebody here said, you know, as you would process a dream. You know, there's many ways that the universe is talking to us through our problems and through our solutions, but we have to have the conversation through our lifestyle. That's fascinating to me. I guess, you know, as we start to wrap up, in the last bit you were talking about some things that had caused me to want to know. You know, in the 90s, and I'm a little bit older than you, you know, your heyday was, not heyday, but your young days was probably, I guess, in the early 2000s. Mid-2000s. Mine was like in the late 90s, early 2000s, mid-2000s. And even though, you know, definitely there was drugs back then, there's always been drugs. Always, every decade, there's drugs. But it seemed like today, I want you just to talk about, if you can, when it comes to hip-hop culture. We know musicians of probably all genres engage in some type of drug use. Not all of them, but we know that it's prevalent in some ways. But when you look at hip-hop right now, you know, I'm not sure if there's ever been a time in hip-hop where, like, drugs was like you know, almost like a glass of water. You know what I mean? So if you had opportunity to talk to not just young people, but people in general, because hip-hop is young people and older people, you know, what do you think about the state of hip-hop and music and how it incorporates, you know, the participation in drug use as if it's normal?
Yeah, you know, hip-hop has definitely changed. I don't even like calling it, you know, the new music hip-hop. It's captured a lot of people, a lot of different demographics. A lot of people listen to that stuff. If you really do your research, those Jay-Z's and people like they never use drugs.
True.
You know, the successful businessmen, they never did drugs. You know, they never popped ecstasy or got drunk at the club to a point you're blacking out, throwing bottles. These were businessmen. You know, they promoted something and they were their own, you know, corporation. You can't damage your corporation. It gives you a bad name. So when you get these younger rappers that are promoting, you know, doing Molly and drugs and all this other stuff, realistically, number one, I don't know if they even do it, you know, and number two, you know, it's just taking a younger generation and making them stupid, you know, especially when it's a generation of followers, like we were talking about at the beginning. We don't have leaders in this generation. Everybody follows the next person, you know, and I tend to say the only way you can make a difference is by being that example for the generation behind you, and that generation behind them is they got to be the example for them, so on and so forth. You know, so when you get a whole bunch of nonsense going on, you know, at the end of the day, you know, what we have in the world today is what you're going to get.
Wow, fascinating. I think that's a great segue into bringing it to a close, but also paraphrasing what we talked about at the beginning, right? Because as you said, man, like when you watch, you know, I watch interviews with Future, and he says, he's like, look, this drug talk, he's like, it's a gimmick.
That's it.
You know what I mean? Like, this is just a way for me to get on. Now, do I agree with that? No, I don't agree with that. But I think sometimes we blame rappers and rap labels and rap execs and the powers that be in rap so much, and we take accountability away from the rap fans, right? Like the rap fans demand some of this stuff. I've heard some rappers say, you know, I tried to go this route, but they didn't want that. I'm a business person, so I'm gonna just give them what they want. It's not the rappers just making this music because they want it. The rap fans want it.
Yeah, I think a lot to blame is not so much the rapper, but the point you brought up with the execs. The big people that sign these rappers. A lot of people don't see behind the scenes that these people, when they talk about sell their soul, they sign a piece of paper to change who they are. You know, you get somebody, you know, that wants to rap about street stuff, and then they sign, you know, with a major record label, and they're like, we don't want you to talk about street stuff. We want you to talk about using heroin and doing this and doing that. You know, a lot of rappers nowadays aren't authentic anymore, unless you go independent. You know, you don't get those J. Coles and Kendricks, and when you do, the media doesn't like playing them. They don't get a lot of radio play.
That's true.
Because they speak the truth.
I've been wondering what happened to J. Cole.
J. Cole just dropped a new album. I think I hear one song on the radio, and that whole album is fire.
Somebody sent me a text.
You know,
like,
same with Kendrick. The whole album is fire. But you play this silly nonsense. It's not even music to me.
You know, I agree with you, and I disagree. I agree with you with what you're saying, but I think that I still have to hold rap fans, hip hop fans accountable too, because they're selling their soul and they don't have to sign no dot. And I mean, like, even though the execs are going to do what the execs are going to do, you know, nobody is forcing rap fans to sell their own souls. They're choosing to do that. But also with what you said, you know, about you know, how, like, I believe that there's this, you know, there's this thing called Polsky's Diamond where, you know, it groups people, right? So if you walk into a group, it's going to be leaders, lieutenants, followers, scapegoats. Most of the diamond is group members, and the leaders are typically at the top, right? They're the most smart, they're the most sophisticated, most charismatic, and they get the lieutenants to do all the dirty work, but they influence the culture. So like you said, when you look at 50 Cent, the Jay-Z's, you know what I mean? And even though I don't think that they never did drugs, but I get your point. Like, they're not going to do anything that's going to subvert their business,
damage their image,
and damage their, you know, what they have going on. But I think that also goes back to what we talked about at the beginning about the importance of having your true sense of self, and not just having a true sense of self, but to love yourself, to be in love with yourself, because you can have a true sense of who you are, and it can be scary. You're like, man, like, I'm this type of person. Like, it's not all the time where having a true sense of self is going to set you free. No, you have to be in love with yourself. And when you fall in love with yourself and you have a true sense of self, there's just certain things that don't fit into that. You know what I mean? Not to say that you won't ever drink, not to say that you won't ever do X, Y, and Z, but it's hard to really do things that are excessively and exponentially negative and harmful to your life whenever you are in love with who you are. A lot of people say, I love myself, listen, I don't believe in love all the time. Versus not believing it, I don't respect it all the time, because you can love somebody and still hurt them. Right. But when you're in love with somebody, you make an effort not to hurt that person. So I think that, it's just that it's an accumulation of things that people need to do to avoid becoming addicted to things. But also, addiction ain't always bad. If you get addicted to healthy things, right, you might not be addicted to unhealthy things. So can you leave us with just any more final thoughts, just in terms of like the wisdom from Mr. Alex Hoffman? He has a power name, This is a Hollywood name, Alex Hoffman. Man, my gosh, every time I call him up, I think I'm calling somebody, out in California. But do you have anything, maybe any, not a one-liner, but just something that you wanted to leave us with in terms of maybe somebody who's struggling with addiction, or maybe somebody who's struggling with recovery?
Yeah, at the end of the day, just be true to yourself. I can sit here and I can talk a whole bunch of good stuff. I can talk my ass off. But what I do and what makes me different is I actually walk that path. I try to set an example for that younger generations, the kids in high school and middle school. I feel like that's the biggest thing we can do, not just for addiction and recovery, but just for life and society in general. Instead of, putting a stigma on somebody and pointing them out because they're different or they dress a little funny of a way that you think they shouldn't, dress, do something different. As a world, we need to change. Yes. As a society, things need to be different. Yes. We can't constantly point out everybody else's flaws and then let outside influences affect who we are. Yeah. Because my nose looks funny now, I want to change it. That's who you are. Be yourself at the end of the day. Right. And if you're struggling, absolutely, feel free to reach out to me if you want to put my email on here or something like that. Absolutely. But if I can overcome, the things, even you, if we can overcome the things that we overcame, anybody can do it. Absolutely. It's not impossible. Yes. I've been down in the dirt many a times. I've found little ways to crawl out. Yes.
That's man. I appreciate you for coming.
Yeah.
Very much, man.
Absolutely,
Very much.
Thanks for having me.
Oh man, I appreciate you for coming. So with that said, how can people who may be, I think that you definitely impacted a lot of people. How can people reach out to you if they want to do some consultation? Their social media, their email, phone number.
Yeah. Well, if anybody's struggling with addiction or recovery, please feel free to reach out to me. My phone number is 412-398-6616. I work for Brook-Tree Health Services. We're drug and alcohol treatment providers, so we can help anybody with addiction. And then also, just feel free to reach out to me on my Instagram. It's the official Alex Hayes. That's all one word, no spaces. And then you can also reach out on my email at hoffman.alexh@yahoo.com.
Hey, once again, man,
thank you.
I appreciate you very much. I thank you all very much for staying tuned, and please stay tuned for our next episode. We'll let you know whenever it's coming. You can definitely reach out to me through my private practice at www.perspectve.com. That's perspective.com. Make sure that you take the I out of perspective, because sometimes to broaden your own horizons, you've got to take yourself out of your own perspective. You can definitely see what we're doing here at Duquesne University, the Counseling and Wellbeing Center. Please go to duq.edu, and then you can use the search tab to type the Wellbeing Center. There's some very fascinating things that we have going on here as well. We meet very fascinating and enlightening, wise people of all ages, as you see with Mr. Hoffman, and we appreciate you. Make sure that you also go to a website, to Perspective's website, and pick up a new copy of my new book, The Language of the Few. It really encompasses much of the conversation that we have talked about today, reconnecting you with what many people call the language of the universe, the language of the world, symbolic side, but it shows you how to use your stress as your strength and your problems as your power. And this is what has been described by some of the greatest minds of all time as the key to life. There are things that you can do to make this, very meaningful in terms of how you can live a healthier, happier, more productive life. You can figure out some of the messages that are being communicated to you. So again, Alex, hey man, it's always a blessing to be around you, and I'm sure that some time in the future we'll have you back on. Thank you all, and make sure you tune in to Season 2, Episode 2, our next episode of The Power of Perspective, the talk show. Expand your perspective. Peace.